Hey folks, welcome to the Do-It-Yourself Dad channel. Today, we're bringing you the truth about these inexpensive kids quads or ATVs brought in from China. So we've had this bike for 3 years, so we're gonna give you an honest review. It's not one of these unboxing videos where we take it out of the box, putt around a yard real quick, and say it's great. We're actually gonna tell you how this thing has held up over the 3 years of riding. Now, if you haven't already, go down below and hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what other kind of stuff you'd like to see here on the channel. Now, after 3 years of riding, my daughter has managed to put a couple little cosmetic scratches and chips in the paint on this thing, but it's actually held up really well. Now let's get in underneath it, and I want to talk about the first kind of issue that we've run into. Now the suspension on this thing, it does have dual front suspension, so independent front suspension, and a single shock in the rear, and all three are adjustable. Now the downside is the front suspension is extremely stiff, too stiff for a kid. So there are aftermarket springs you can put on here, or you can run the tire pressure low. We opted to just run the tire pressure low on this thing, but it is just something to note that it might be something you do want to get in there and change. Something else to note on these, a lot of the wiring is exposed. Now I have not had any issues with this. It was a little bit discerning when we first got the bike, but we haven't had any issues. We have gone through some creeks. We've washed a bunch of times and we haven't had any issues, but I do go in there and clean all these and make sure they are dry after every time we ride. These bikes do have shifters, but they don't have a clutch or a regular setup the way you would see on a dirt bike. And they also don't have a normal 3 or 4 speed shifter the way you see on some other youth quads. This thing has a high and a low gear and a reverse. The reverse is really nice actually to back out when you're out on the trail. So it does have that feature down here, but it does not have a clutch, which is nice for the little guys. Now coming up into the controls, this particular one does not have a rear brake up here. The rear brake is over here on the right side. It's a foot brake. It is a hydraulic disc foot brake. On the front, you've got a regular front brake with 2 cables running down to 2 drums. The throttle here, you can see I actually put a thumb extender on it right here. The throttle was a little bit tough when my daughter was small with her real little hands. She's kind of grown into it, but she still likes that being on there. One of the nice features on the throttle, especially for kids, is this little screw. That little screw you can run in, and it acts as a governor so they can't bring the throttle wide open. These do have 110cc engines, so it is a pretty powerful engine for a little kid. Now coming around to the back of it, you can see here the adjustable rear shock, and with the single rear shock, I mentioned that the front shock was pretty stiff. The rear shock was pretty adequate for my daughter, especially as she got heavier. We do have it in the softest setting right now, but it has held up. It's also noted that these things do come with tail lights and headlights, and the brake lights actually do work. And it's got a regular spark arrestor inside the exhaust there, so it's legal in all 50 states. Regular chain drive, and you can see here you've got that disc. Now this here is probably the biggest selling feature for me, at least. I live in California. Insert all the California jokes now down in the comments. But you can green sticker these. And a lot of these bikes you can't green sticker or even red sticker. They might not even be registerable. Green sticker means we can ride this year-round with no issues. And that was a big selling point. And that's also why I wanted to mention buying it at your local shop. If you choose to buy this bike at your local shop, instead of buying it online, if you're in a state that requires registration, the shop will take care of it for you, as mine did. Bought the bike, brought it home. A couple days later, we got an envelope in the mail, and the bike was registered, and we can ride it anywhere in California without any issues with the rangers or local law enforcement. Now coming down here, you can see where you go in there to change the oil. Now that little hole was not originally there, and you used to have to remove this entire panel. I used a hole saw and opened that up so we could get easily in there to check the oil and also change it. So that's a nice little pointer on these. Now one thing I always thought was strange, and it might be hard to see here, but the front track width on these is actually a little bit wider than the rear track width on these. The rear end's a little bit narrower. And there are spacers available online, and I got a link for those down in the description as well. If you've got one of these, you can put those spacers in there and widen out the rear end. Some people will also opt for wider handlebars here to give their kids some more control. I've got a link down there below as well if you want to check out something like that. Now removing the seat, we're exposing the battery down here. And you see it's a little bit dusty, but we've got the battery down there, but you can see underneath here I added something, and that is a battery kill switch. Now if you come up here, these bikes do have a keyed ignition, which is nice. You can pull the keys out and then your kids can't go ahead and start it, but this bike comes with kind of a strange feature, and I don't honestly know why you'd want this on a kid's quad. it comes with an alarm. And what I noticed was parked in the garage, even with it keyed off, this alarm slowly drained that battery and I was killing batteries. So what I did was, instead of unhooking the battery each time, I just popped the seat, flip that switch, and now it's not going to drain the battery. You could also just disconnect the battery, or you can see here I even have leads running to a battery tender. You could do that too. But that's just another pointer to watch out for, is make sure you don't kill the battery due to that alarm. So now for the obvious big question, have I had any problems with it? Yes, I have, but they haven't really that bad, and I can't honestly say they would have been any worse than if I had a quad like that, because as we all know, if you're into the off-road hobby, things just get jarred apart. So the first thing that happened on it was we were out one day and all of a sudden the thing just died. It wouldn't run. And I went all the way through it trying to figure out what was going on. I checked the battery terminals and I actually found that one of the grounding wires from the battery connected to the frame had loosened itself out. And then I went through and I nut and bolted the whole thing. Everything else seemed fine, but I did notice there's no real Loctite or anything used on these, so it might be an idea to go through and just nut and bolt it as you would really any off-road vehicle, so you don't run into those things. The only other thing I managed to do, and this was completely my fault, but coming up underneath here, there is the little fuel petcock, and it was leaking. I tried to tighten it, I over-tightened it, and I snapped it off. Now, yeah, it was probably because the metal isn't the strongest metal in the world, but I did manage to get it fixed for a couple of dollars. Now, one of the questions I had when I bought this thing from the shop is, say that engine completely kills itself, grenades itself, and I've got to get parts. How does that work? And the shop that I have locally carries all the parts for these, and that's why I did mention before, if you can get this from a shop, support your local retailer, but it also means you've got local support. If you do find yourself in the Ventura County area, check out Chronic Racing. I've got a link for them in the description below. The staff there are amazing, and they've been great with this. So great, so we bought a second one for my parents. But he said, get that whole engine piece right there, about 200 bucks. So if everything goes south, you can replace the whole thing for $200. So now's for the big question. Would you do it again? And the answer is yes, I would buy one of these things again. We've had a lot of fun with it. 3 years of fun, going out to the desert, riding around, jumping at trail rides, hanging out with friends, making new friends. The sport has really been a lot of fun. And this quad has allowed us to do it for a pretty good price. Even if you went out to buy a used kids quad, even a Japanese brand kids quad, you're going to spend a lot more money than you would for one of these things new, and then you don't really know what you're getting sometimes. So yes, I would absolutely buy one of these quads again. Now, if this video helped you out at all, give me a great big thumbs up, and hey, go down below and leave me a comment if you've had one of these, if you've had a good experience or a bad experience. Help our viewers out, and let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching.